My name is Cynthia Jones Gottlieb, and this is a video conference for the book, The Brain-Friendly Workplace, 5 Big Ideas from Neuroscience that Address Organizational Challenges. The author is Erica Garms, the publisher is ASTD Press, and the copyright date is 2014. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time. In summary, Garms explains the challenges of the modern workplace and describes, in layman's terms luckily, 5 big ideas in current neuroscience research that could help make the workplace more rewarding for employees and productive for employers. In addition, Garms provides concrete examples of how these ideas have helped some of the most successful companies become the most successful companies. In part 1, the convergence of challenges within the workplace, she begins by defining what brain-friendly is. Brain-friendly strategies are strategies that encourage us to use our brains in ways that the brain tends to naturally want to work. Our brains function in either, according to Garms, the toward or the away mode. When our brain is feeling in the toward mode, the brain is easily taking in information. It's curious, it can reflect, it can think, it can do a lot of things much easier. However, when our brains are in the away mode, our perceptions are narrow, we're not particularly ready for action or for change or to take on challenges. So of course, the goal would be to get our brains in the toward mode. She briefly starts off with some examples of workplace practices that puts our brains in the toward mode or that are brain friendly. So for example, structuring a meeting and meeting agendas in order to parallel our attention spans is very brain friendly. Not being very brain friendly is ignoring limits of our attention spans and focusing in designing agendas. A brain-friendly strategy would be setting sales team goals and encouraging everyone to work together to exceed them. Not brain-friendly strategy would be telling one sales team that the employee with the lowest close rate next month will be on probation. We all know how well we deal with that. Brain-friendly strategy might include organized communication plan that's developed to spread the message of upcoming reorganizations, and that employees are given multiple options for interacting with others about this news. Not brain-friendly, executive management just announces a reorganization that will begin in 6 months with no details about how that will be coming. So she has a great section on challenges that we all face in the workplace. First, she talks about upheaval in management. Old school management, she says, is just not working anymore. No longer do employees need or want close supervision. They don't necessarily need to be pushed to perform. And even if they are pushed to perform, they don't perform as well as they could. And not only no longer do employees only care about the money they get in compensation. Now, employees are, according to research, more motivated by self-management. They seek responsibility, they seek independence. They can be intrinsically motivated to grow professionally. When employees, she discusses, do not have these needs met, they tend to be disengaged and apathetic. She also talks about how employees are now motivated by different things. So once upon a time, managers relied on extrinsic rewards and punishments to get employees to do what they wanted them to do. Now, on the other hand, employees need a working relationship with their supervisor. They need to know that opportunities for growth are available to them. They need to be recognized and valued for the work done, and they need to have a good work environment. Garms also discusses in a quite interesting way the different diversity everyone is facing in the workplace now as well. I was fascinated by her chapter on the fact that there are now 4 generations in the workforce right now, and that all 4 generations exhibit different characteristics because of the time in which they grew up. So I wanted to show you briefly the 4 generations and the short summaries of the characteristics of each. The first generation, the traditionalists, the oldest, that is still in the workplace. They grew up with the stock market crash, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, Pearl Harbor, World War II, and the New Deal. As a result of that, most of them are frugal and afraid of running out of things. They are focused on taking care of everything and everyone. They have faith in institutions. They trust the hierarchy. They're courteous, they have a strong work ethic, and they're private. When I read this part, my father, who was born in 1924, is a part of this generation. He's no longer with us, was a part of this generation, and this described him perfectly. The baby boomers grew up with Vietnam, the Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy assassinations, the civil rights movements, the moon landing, the Watergate scandal, with an environment of social rebellion and a growing presence of television. As a result, they tend to be out to change the world. They think they can make a difference. They question authority. They are known as competitive, career-driven workaholics. They are hard workers, but they sacrifice a work-life balance in order to attain their career goals. And they're very individualistic, working hard to differentiate themselves. When I read this, my mother, who was born in 1951, she's no longer with me either, was in this generation. And this describes her pretty well. So Generation Xers, they grew up with the fall of the Berlin Wall, a widespread knowledge of AIDS, integration in schools. They were latchkey kids. They saw milk carton kids. During this time, saw parents laid off at work. They saw more marriages end in divorce than in any other generation. And there was a growing presence of personal computers at home. As a result, Generation Xers want challenge, autonomy, honest and timely feedback, and a lot of growth opportunities. They want a work-life balance. They're independent and not team problem solvers. They expect that things will change at work, at home, and are very good with rolling with it. They have no loyalty to institutions, typically. They're pretty cynical and skeptical and have no expectations of career security. I laughed when I read about this generation because this is the generation in which I fall. And yeah, this is all pretty realistic and pretty true to this. It's no wonder my father and I, and my mother and I, for that matter, had so many interesting discussions. And the last generation that is in the workplace currently are the millennials. They grew up watching school shootings, the Y2K panic, the Oklahoma City bombings. They think diversity is normal, even trendy. They saw unprecedented economic prosperity during the Clinton years. They grew up with 24/7 technology, and this generation has a deep focus on child development. As a result, they want clear goals and expectations. They like sharing their opinions, sometimes too much, joking. They need ongoing feedback, mentoring. They like to work in teams and they like to collaborate. They do want a work-life balance. They can be seen as impatient. They have a heavy use and reliance on technology, and they expect instant answers. As a teacher, I'm starting my 21st year. This is my 21st year, and I work with a lot of millennials. And I had a big connection to this chapter or this section when I read it because this rings very true to me as well. Garms points out that this is the first time ever 4 generations have all been in the workplace at the same time. So no wonder there are challenges. When I read this, I laughed thinking about all of the faculty meetings I've sat in listening to baby boomers and millennials have arguments back and forth, neither one willing to change their opinion. And this makes it very clear as to why. So, what can employers do to make that more comfortable in the workplace? Well, Garms gives us a lot of suggestions on how to make the workplace brain friendly. So now I'm going to get into the heart of her book, The 5 Big Ideas from Neuroscience. And as I said earlier, luckily, even though some of the terms are very scientific, she describes them in easy to understand layman's terms. So idea number 1, here's one of those big words, neuroplasticity. This idea puts forth that once upon a time, scientists believed that the neural connections we were born with were all we got, period. That was it. No new ones were grown. You couldn't fix them once they were damaged. If you grew up in the 80s like I did, you saw those commercials about the egg and this is your brain, and then they fry the egg, this is your brain on drugs. They believed at that time, once you killed those brain cells and those connections, that was it. They were done and gone. Now, however, scientists know that these connections can be regenerated, and even better, more can be grown. So Garms states that our brains can, it's pretty amazing, strengthen existing connections, form new connections, remove connections, don't we all wish we could do that sometimes, grow new cells, and we do all of this in response to the stimuli we encounter daily. So what exactly does that mean? We can actually train our brains to be calm, to feel less anxious, to become less easily irritated, to overreact less, to improve communication with others, and to feel happier. So this can help in the workplace by helping, I'm sorry. Helping workers reframe thoughts in more useful ways, challenge our judgments, and behave in more productive ways, which I find very cool. Idea number 2 is the SCARF model of human motivation. Garms explains that the SCARF model is based on these 3 premises. The brain treats social threats and rewards the same way as physical threats and rewards. The ability to make decisions and solve problems is hindered by threat response and benefited by a reward response. And the threat response is more intense and, unfortunately, more common and needs to be minimized in social interactions. So, what is the SCARF model? S, status. How we feel our relative, what we feel our relative importance is to others. C, certainty. Our ability to know and predict the future. A, autonomy. Our sense of control over events that surround us. R stands for relatedness, our sense of safety with others. And F is for fairness. We want fair exchanges between people. When these needs are not met, when these needs are met, our brain is in what Garms calls the toward state, and we engage with our environment. When these needs are not met, our brain is in what Garms calls the away state. We feel anxiety, we feel threatened, and we retreat. So in the workplace, this can help because we can understand human motivations, we understand human needs, we can shed light on other people's behavior. Employees would know better how to deal with their peers. Wouldn't that be nice? And employers could more effectively deal with employees, all around better for everybody. Idea 3 that Garms presents is recruitment of the prefrontal cortex, which I will refer to from this point on as the PFC. New research has shown that the PFC holds thoughts that are not brought on by external resources. The 5 main functions of the PFC include understanding, deciding, recalling, memorizing, and inhibiting. Together, these comprise what Garms refers to as thought. The PFC, though, is an amazing thing, according to scientists. They do point out that the PFC does sometimes need to rest. It comprises only 5% of our brain mass, but it needs 25% of the brain's energy for fuel. I was really shocked when I read that. It can easily tire out, and it needs glucose to function well. She even provides examples of snacks that are really PFC friendly, like blueberries, almonds, sunflower seeds, carrot sticks, celery sticks. I had to really read about that because I thought celery was all just water, but it turns out it has quite a bit of potassium in it, which is great for your PFC. Apples and dark chocolate, which of course was the best thing to see on there. The PFC is limited. It can only process a few thoughts at a time. It gets worn out easily after a taxing task. It must recharge fully before working well again. It is the reason for that feeling of being overwhelmed. So she gives this great example. Like, if you ever been in a car driving and someone's talking to you and you're either in a new place or the traffic is really bad and you have to go, hold on, hang on, let me drive. That's your PFC taking over. There's too much input coming in. Your friend talking, you're trying to figure out what street to turn on. Is this a one-way? Is whatever. And you have to tell somebody to stop. You have to stop some kind of input so your PFC can focus on what's really important. So this knowledge can be very helpful in the workplace. Once someone recognizes the symptoms of PFC overload, they can make adjustments. So whether that's an employer who recognizes it in an employee who recognizes it in themselves, an employee who recognizes it in a peer, we can become better at pacing, sequencing, scheduling, and more able to maximize our time. Employers can take this into account by restructuring meetings, meeting times and lengths. I'm sure we've all sat in meetings that seem to go on forever, and at some point everybody just shuts down. Well, there's actual brain research to support that and explain why that happens. And employers can take this and know that, that feeling some people get of being bullied or pressured lowers productivity as well. The fourth idea is about change and how your brain deals with change. This was very interesting to me and explained a lot. So here are the facts that Garms lays out. The brain is a pattern recognizing machine. The brain always tries to find the path of least resistance. The brain sees differences, as in things we disagree with, as errors, or people disagree with us. Errors in our brain trigger a threat, alarm, or anxiety response. So, surprise, surprise, our brains do not like change. So what can we do? Because change is going to happen. Garms provides these suggestions for letting the brain adapt to and accept change. Pause, choose, relabel, and reframe. When we pause, we have to stop and think about us, me. What am I feeling? The first step to solving a problem is admitting you have one. So admit it and know it. This is how I'm feeling up front. Then she suggests to choose to make a conscious decision to try and accept the change and not react with your typical fight response. It has to be very purposeful. Then she suggests relabeling the change. Instead of saying, oh, we have a new lesson planning system, we should see it as an opportunity. Oh, this is a better way to plan my lessons. I get to try a new lesson planning system that might be better. Lastly, she suggests that we reframe our perspective. So we look at it from a better perspective. So if our boss asks us to do something that we think is silly or just adding on to our already full plate, try to see the issue from his or her point of view, not just to think it's just an attack or it's just another thing that we have to do. Managers in the workplace need to understand, she suggests, that change brings about feelings of anxiety and threat. It's natural, it's normal, that's what's going to happen. Managers should be very transparent and about expectations and procedures. Remember that she says brains like certainty. So if the brain knows what's going to happen, it will be more in the toward state and less in the aware state. She also suggests that managers make change much more collaborative and less like a directive, that managers support teamwork, that managers communicate. That is a theme throughout this entire book. Managers need to communicate with their employees. And that managers provide sufficient time for employees to accept change, to process the change, and to work through the change. The last big idea from neuroscience is mindfulness. Mindfulness, she points out, can have many connotations. It can be used in many different ways. In this book, Garms defines mindfulness as the mental state of non-evaluative focused attention and mental reflection. So as I read on, that was more like accepting your thoughts and meditating about them. It was very much a meditative state. The goal, she says, of being mindful is to quiet down the brain. And mindfulness or meditating, calming down the brain, must be practiced. It doesn't happen naturally. I think we all know that. So the neuroscientists have found that being mindful just a few minutes a day, just stopping for a few minutes a day, reflecting on our thoughts and feelings, causes changes in the gray matter of the brain. So the area that controls learning and memory is activated, and the area that controls emotion is regulated. How amazing, right? If we stop just for a few minutes a day, reflected, meditated, tried to quiet our brain, we'd be better learners, our memory would be better, and I know I need that. And our emotions would be regulated. What a better state to go to work in. Therefore, forcing our brain to be mindful for just a short time a day can have a huge impact. It can improve focus, mood, organization, time management, even immunity. Science has shown that doing this just for a few minutes a day can improve your immunities. It can lower anxiety, it can lower your black and white or narrow-minded thinking, and it can lower wear and tear on our bodies. I didn't really understand that at first, but she goes on to explain that when we're anxious and stressed out, we tend to rush. So we're not looking where we're going. We're stepping on elevators without looking. We might be texting and walking. We're driving and we're thinking about other things other than the road. So the wear and tear on our bodies is that effect is pretty interesting. And of course, all of this can have huge positive influences on the workplace. In the very last sections of the book, Garms goes into great detail about two very big, very successful companies. I'm just going to summarize them here, but this is what they do that makes their working environment brain-friendly. She says that the operations of the company are very transparent. So this satisfies the brain's need for certainty. When our brain's need for certainty is satisfied, people are happier. Everybody's calmer. She says these companies share recognition. So not just for huge tasks or huge successes, for all accomplishments, that recognition is shared. They have some kind of system, Twitter, Edmodo, some kind of system where recognition is shared and everyone is aware of everyone's accomplishments. So this satisfies the brain's need for status and for fairness, because status, we want to do well and we want everybody to be recognized. She says there is also a very clear vision. So again, the purpose is set forth. It's very transparent. and that satisfies the brain's need for certainty. In these companies, employees are given ownership for the culture at work and for the company's performance. So instead of when the company is successful, the boss taking all the praise, he shares that praise with everybody in the company. Everybody takes ownership of a company's success, not just the head honcho. So of course, this satisfies the brain's need for autonomy and relatedness. All of these companies respect diversity. And again, this satisfies the brain's need for autonomy and fairness. So this leads to that, according to Garms. When companies understand how employees think, create an international culture, show appreciation for all contributions, big and small, commit to communication that's honest, support all employees' career paths, encourage social interactions, and respect employees' needs, employees tend to have a much better problem-solving attitude. Excuse me, they trust leadership. They're eager for challenge. They feel satisfied with their work. They leave their jobs less often. They're excited about their job. They become more authentic and true to themselves. And she explains that as not just going through the motions or putting on a facade for everybody. They really are trying to do their best work. Employees are more receptive to more opportunities. That's that change where you get to try something new, not have to. They exhibit ownership of their work, and they are proud of where they work and what they do. I really do appreciate your time and attention tonight. All the information in this presentation is cited from Garms, the Brain-Friendly Workplace, 5 Big Ideas from Neuroscience that address organizational challenges. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this and see. Oh my. So I have my question and answer open. Oh, and there's me on screen. Boy, I didn't really want any of that. Okay, any questions or answers? Okay, I'm going to close this broadcast out now, and thank you. I think it's Alice that's here to see this. I appreciate your time so much.